back here on the podcast, talking the latest episode of The Mandalorian, Chapter 15, The Believer. Joining me today to talk about it, guy we haven't actually talked to since Halloween. We did our Halloween pop culture draft. Alan Austin is back. Alan, how are you?
Good, Mike. And my gosh, is that great music.
It's fantastic music. I remember I told you about this show. I'm like, the music is incredible. And you were like, wow, this is, I think you told me, like, this is actually as good as you said it would be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a wonderful score.
Yeah, the score is fantastic. And I don't know about you, but like one of my favorite parts of the episode is like when they play it over the credits and they show you like the artist renderings of like scenes in the episode. I always enjoy that.
Yeah, it's got to be storyboard stuff that they just include in the end credits. And it's such a nice touch. And I guarantee you those pieces of art are going to be printed and sold and collected by Star Wars fans across the world.
Yeah, they are. And I wanted to bring you on, because you're a bit of a different case of a lot of these people. Because everybody I've had on is watching the Mandalorian from the beginning. You kind of took the different road. You went the binge model. Why did you binge the show?
Mike, I'm not very good at waiting for shows that I like. I get very frustrated with that. So usually I'll wait for a show to either come on Netflix where I know I can binge it, or I wait for the season to wrap. That way I can watch it all in one boom period, because that's what satisfies me more. I get very frustrated week to week. And after you binge watch shows in the past, like I binge watched Breaking Bad, I binge watched Better Call Saul, all these shows, you get in the habit of binge watching. So to wait a week is such a frustrating ordeal for me. So I usually try to wait, but now I'm caught up with Mandalorian, and here I am anticipating next week's episode with the inability to patiently wait.
Yeah, I think this show also, it's very different than some of the Star Wars that we've gotten of late. And I know you're a guy who's been in and out in the Star Wars, who's like, you've seen the classics, you've seen some of the new ones, but like, where do you feel like this is more of like what you were looking for out of Star Wars?
Well, here's my thing with Star Wars. As a kid, I loved the original three, which are 4, 5, and 6. I saw all of them in theaters because they did a re-release in the late 90s, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, I saw all of them in theaters, and I loved R2-D2, Boba Fett, and the Stormtrooper outfit, or costume, or uniform, whatever. Those always caught my eye as a kid. And The Mandalorian has droids, it has Boba Fett, and it has a lot of Stormtroopers. So this is like a series that lets me dig into what I really enjoyed as a child anyway. But as for the new movies, and the
prequels,
first 3 chronologically,
yeah.
I hadn't seen any of them before fans across the internet had already ripped them apart.
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to go back and watch them when I already knew that Star Wars fans were disappointed.
Yeah.
So I saw Attack of the Clones in IMAX. And the only reason I saw it was because my family wanted to see what an IMAX movie was all about back in the day. So I saw Attack of the Clones, and I saw the Rogue One, which I know is standalone, and I saw whatever the first one is of the newest batch.
The Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens, which I enjoyed. So I don't have a love-hate relationship with Star Wars. I relatively have a good relationship with Star Wars. I think part of it's because I avoided all the things that the true fans cannot stand.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Because I know the newest one was panned by Star Wars fans.
Oh,
I think
9 was awful.
I think I saw maybe 1 or 2 positive reviews, and they were more of the just enjoy it critique, which I never respect.
Yeah, I think, my opinion, I think the one I'm curious to get your take on is I would say for you, based on how divided it was between the critics loved it and the diehards hated it, I'd be curious to get your take on The Last Jedi. I think that's the one you should check out, and let me know what you think of that.
Oh, I plan on it. Now that they're all available on Disney, I have no excuse not to. And the fact that I enjoy The Mandalorian this much makes me want to go back and watch them now.
Yeah. I think, episode 1, episode 9, you kind of know what you're getting, that they're not going to be great. I think episode 8 is very polarizing. It's I'm personally more high on it than most of the Star Wars fandom is. But I also see the arguments of this is not what I signed up for when I signed up for Star Wars.
And keep in mind, my outside looking in viewpoint of Star Wars is that George Lucas has reconstructed the original 3 and added CGI and then the CGI in the prequels isn't as clean. It's not that clean, and all this like critiques that are just like every reason why I shouldn't watch, but I still want to because I want to fully embrace the story and the world that was created.
Yeah, indeed. And we'll talk about the worlds created in The Mandalorian today. We're going to talk about Chapter 15, The Believer. Interesting episode title. But before we go any further, I'm going to play the good old-fashioned spoiler warning. Okay, if you have not watched through Chapter 15, The Believer or The Mandalorian, get out. Go watch the episode if you care about being spoiled. Otherwise, hang on with us. And I will say, based on my expectations last week, I was talking to my friend Nick about what was going to happen. This is not the direction I thought the episode would go in.
No, this episode. So you had expressed to me that every episode was like, it has the through line of the Mandalorian and the child, Grogu, but they also kind of solve the problem of the week.
Yeah.
And this is another problem of the week episode. But what I love about this show is that even the side characters have a journey they go on. They have an emotional connection to us, the audience. And Mayfeld, the Bill Burr character, who's he's not the focus, he's not the sole focus, but we learned so much about him in this episode that when it ends, we're rooting for him. And he was such a bad guy in season 1. So there's character growth, and the scene which we'll get to with his commanding officer, one of the better scenes in the show's run to this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, first of all, two things were different. Number one, obviously, for the first time since this show began, we have not had Grogu in a scene at all. Like, he was completely absent in this episode, which is unusual for this show. Actually, it's actually The Mandalorian about him, not about Grogu as the main character. And number two, I was talking to Nick last week, my friend who talked about this, and we were saying, hey, like, this is going to be the episode where they go around planet to planet, build a team, they'll grab Mayfeld first, then they'll go find maybe Ahsoka Tano, they'll go find the other Mandalorians. But no, we spent the entire episode with Mayfeld just trying to find Moff Gideon's location. I thought that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, they stuck to their guns about him being a prisoner, and they let him escape. And I'm sure we'll run into Mayfeld again some point down the road, but no, they're not forming a motley crew of all-stars to kind of take down Moff Gideon. And that's very interesting to me.
It definitely is. And we'll start the episode off. We start off with, we see Mayfeld on the prison camp. Cara Dune comes in and says, hey, bends the rules, gets him out. And then I thought it was funny when Slave One approaches, Boba Fett comes out first. Mayfeld's like, oh, I thought you were the other guy. And then Mando comes out and is like, I'll go back. I don't want to deal with you.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah.
And Bill Burr's timing has been impeccable in his 2 episodes. He's a guy who you would think maybe doesn't fit in the world, but there's a reason he got cast, and it's because he provides a levity and also at the same time an intensity that few can do. And look at Bill Burr go. What an actor. And he's great in The King of Staten Island as well. And I'm really enjoying his work off the comedy stage as much as I did when he was on it.
Yeah, he was definitely the MVP of this episode. And then we do see they go to this another planet to try and find information on Moff Gideon's ship and how to locate it. That was what Bill Burr's skill set was the first season. And we come to this planet, and Mayfeld tells us you can't have any real affiliation with the Imperial database. You can get in there. So Fennec obviously can't go because she's wanted by the Empire. Cara can't go because she's clearly Republic. Boba Fett's like, they know my face, which is clearly a drawback, like reference in the movie. So we end up with Mando and Mayfeld basically going on a buddy cop mission for the whole episode. I think that was a fun choice.
And interesting that the Mandalorian is like, and yes, Bill Burr's the MVP, but a lot of credit has to go to the Mandalorian for willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done in this episode. And he has to swallow it's more than pride. It's like a code that he has to go against by taking his helmet off for the child, essentially. And it just adds another layer to his character as well. And I feel like they're going to he takes his helmet off 1 episode a season. I feel like that's kind of what they're going to go for. And there was no forcing of that issue. It was plot driven. He had to take his helmet off, and it was great. And it was just such a good scene. And yeah, you're right. Mayfield is the MVP of this episode. He gets in as many jams as he gets them out of, but it all works out in the end. And the Mandalorian putting on the Dark Stormtrooper costume, it adds another fun scene that us as fans can look back on and say that was different and still amazing.
Yeah, we do have the plot where basically like Mando and Mayfeld attack a convoy and really pull a homage to Episode 4 by just impersonating stormtroopers to get inside Imperial base. And I think one of the fun things that I liked in there was the conversation that they were having in the convoy on their way down to the base. And Mayfeld basically like, the Empire, the New Republic, they're all the same to me. And Mando's kind of sitting there silently. What do you think about Mayfeld's take on what was going on in the universe?
I thought that was a very interesting social critique about, a lot of, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but there was a lot of political undertones, not just for the U.S., but for around the world in that statement.
Yeah,
you've got a lot going on. You got a lot to unpack in what he said there, for sure.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I mean, this is another line that also comes it's a little bit of a callback to Episode 8, which I know you haven't seen, but like there's a character in there who basically is a information hacker. He basically is like, you know what? Both sides are bad. Nobody is really a winner in this thing. I sort of like the attitude Mayfeld has at this point in the episode.
Yeah, and with, them knowledgeable of the 2020 election, slightly before the release of this episode, there's definitely a timeliness to his sentiment.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up because the character, I'm trying to find the name of the guy because there's a pretty well-known actor who played this character in Episode 8 because it was Benicio del Toro played this guy. He basically is an information.
Oh, okay.
He basically is an information hacker, and like the members of the Resistance. I think this was Finn's mission in Episode 8. It was like he tracks down this guy to try and locate I forget what the reason was. They needed something to hack a ship or track something, and he was the information guy. And he's like, "Look, these guys are buying weapons. The Republic is buying weapons. Like nobody wins."
Right.
Yeah. So
that's great. No, it adds layers and elements to everything in the world. It's not just good guy versus bad guy. There's so much more to it. There's a lot of gray areas, and we like that more as audience members.
Yeah, we do. And we do get, obviously, we get our action. We get the great fight sequence where Mando has to go on top of the convoy and fight the pirates off who are trying to basically blow up the convoy. I thought it was a fantastic fight scene, seeing Mando have to be out of his element, not have his usual armor, rely on having to rely just on the blasters and his own physical skills.
For sure, and it's one of the few scenes where Mando is like, he's about to give up, but he's not going to give up. He's just going to stand there, put his fists up, and hope for the best. And it reminded me of the Matterhorn, or whatever it was called, the big horned monster that before Grogu stopped him in season 1, Mando just kind of stood there with his last gasp, so to speak, and they did that again here. And then the triumphant, I don't know what the names of their ships are, but they
TIE fighters.
Yeah, the triumphant TIE fighters saving the day with the glorious music, which was a interesting choice as well.
Yeah, because Mando's does hold him up, but then eventually there's too many of them. Looks like they're going to get blown up. All of a sudden, we get the soaring music, and you think, oh, maybe Slave 1's coming to save the day. Nope, it's an army of TIE fighters and stormtroopers, which is the complete opposite of what you expect as a Star Wars fan. You're like, we're playing the hero music for the bad guys.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's a nice touch because if the story is about the Mandalorian and that's the moment that saves him, you need to triumphant music, regardless of where it comes from.
Yeah, and that was pretty cool. We see them come in, and then Mando and Mayfeld come in. Mayfeld obviously had his helmet off, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go into the cafeteria, grab the information off the computer," but he chickens out because he sees his former boss. Mando steps up and says, "Hey, I'll take my helmet off and go see this and go take care of this." So this is, I think, by far the longest we have seen Pedro Pascal without the helmet on the entire show.
Yeah, I mean, see, when I think of Pedro Pascal, I think of mainly the Viper. I know he's been in a ton of other things, but my strongest connection with him is the Viper in Game of Thrones. And, Mandalorian's voice and the Viper's voice are very different. He uses very different accents. So I'm always intrigued to see him use Mando's accent without the helmet on. I get very excited for it. And I just love him as an actor. So anytime he's got the helmet off, It's great. And in season 1, he had it off for 10 seconds. Here, it's for a whole scene, and it's a really intense scene. So I was very pleased with everything I saw here. And the taking of the helmet off, like I said, did everything it took, and Mayfield was there to help him out in a pinch.
Yeah, because after it's done, the commander who Mayfeld references before comes up to him and is like, and grilling Mando, and Mando has no poker face to see. Like, he is really about to like crap his pants, and you could tell like he has no ability to think on his feet in this spot.
He's never had to have a poker face.
Yeah, it's true. You can hide behind the helmet.
Yeah, you hide behind the helmet. And Mayfield, who's extremely witty and quick on his feet, it's such a good scene. It's just such a good scene.
It's a very fun scene. And then basically the commander's like, hey, you guys are the only convoy made in today. Good job for you. Let's have a drink. And then this is one of the my favorite conversation of the whole episode is like when you slowly start to realize like how like terrible these Imperial people are. And the Imperial thing is another one that's sort of coming like very real world political tones. This idea of like, hey, like people just want to be ruled. They don't care who rules them. They need leadership and they need like discipline. The Empire will come roaring back. And you slowly see Mayfeld turn against the Imperial beliefs here. I thought that was very interesting to see that change happen just like facially.
It also, in a way, humanizes stormtroopers. Because you realize they're just guys who fought in a war for what they thought was the right cause, and they all died. Not all of them, but a good chunk. And Bill Burr's Mayfield is there to kind of give them a pulse as just something more than mindless henchmen. It adds an element that these stormtroopers, the bad guys, are not necessarily humans. I know there's like a blurred line of everyone's race and what creature they are, but it gives them human qualities, and we lose that in the past because we just see them as mindless henchmen. But Bill Burr is sitting there saying, hey, I lost friends, I lost family, families lost dads, families lost other family members, and it's a really interesting look at that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And we do get this moment that, like, in retrospect, once you see Bill Burr's facial expressions, like, change, you kind of should see it coming. But basically, he kills the commander just, like, in the middle of the cafeteria, like, says, and basically justifies the man. It's like, hey, he saw your face. He can't be allowed to live. I thought it was a fun way to sort of justify that.
Yeah, it was great. It was extremely witty.
Yeah, it was witty. And then we get the other great action sequence of this episode. We get the prison, they break out from the base. We get this great shot of them trying to escape on the walls, and we see everybody sort of doing their thing. We see Cara Dune and Fennec basically just sniping everybody left and right. We see these incredible like moves trying to go up the wall. Like, they always have these incredible visual styles for how they want to set up these fight scenes. And I like that there's something different every time.
Yeah, for sure. And the first image that came to my mind during this was the movie The Fugitive with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones, which is probably dating me a little bit. But, up on the waterfall in that movie, or the dam, and then you had this here, it just reminded me of that.
Yeah, because I remember last week I was saying, I thought last week felt like basically like a giant hand captured the flag, where they were trying to defend Grogu being the flag, and they were trying to defend that. This one, like, is very much, like you said, it's like going up a waterfall, vertical elements. I liked these different touches they add to these styles.
Yeah, and it was the second could fall from a high vertical spot of the season because of the volcano in the other episode.
Yeah, indeed. And I did like obviously everybody has the role play. Boba Fett comes in, and hell of a shot by Mayfield with the sniper gun to basically wipe out the entire base.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah. That was awesome. And again, it's a callback to his skill set.
It is a tremendous callback to his skill set. And at the end of the episode, we do have the fun, witty bit between Mando and Cara when they're talking to Mayfeld. Like, oh, too bad Mayfeld died in the mission here, and he's just slowly pick up and like, oh, I can leave.
I always wonder where people without ships go.
Yeah,
like, where's he going? I know he's free, but what's he going to do? And I was a little upset that Boba Fett's helmet was like clean and polished in this episode. I was hoping like the wear and tear the gear took would like give it more character. Like, I wish it would stay in its like, let's say, damaged state. Yeah, like it's got like character.
Yeah.
and they clean and polished it up, which I understand. But I was kind of hoping that it would be the way it's been, to show that he's been through a lot.
Yeah, he definitely has been through a lot, and we do end the episode. I think this is probably one of the best moments of the entire thing. It sets you up perfectly for the finale, where Mando sends a holographic message to Gideon's ship, wants to figure out how to track it, and basically says, like, I'm coming for you. Like, you and I are gonna finish. I'm taking the kid back, and you're not getting in my way. And the look on Giancarlo Esposito's face in that scene, I think, was very well done.
Very well done, and it's a very simple message. He gets his point across. He doesn't get too poetic about it. You know, there's no like, he doesn't do anything poetic. He just says, I'm coming for something that means more to me than you'll ever know, and there's no way you're going to stop me. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, he's not chewing the scenery there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a good place to end the episode. And I think it was pretty straightforward, the whole thing. But I thought it was a nice, enjoyable ride. And Mayfeld sort of being the centerpiece was a very fun choice.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Mando, we love him because he's Mando. But Bill Burr's Mayfeld is able to provide a comic outlet that the show doesn't always have. Although the show does have a lot of humor. But he just brings such a different, amped up, turned up to 11 element compared to everyone else in the show, that it not only is it welcome, it's kind of needed at times.
Yeah, and one thing I want to touch on before is, like, obviously this is our first episode without any Grogu presence in it, and the plot has sort of hinted that there may be a point where Mando and Grogu are separated. Considering we got a glimpse of what life without Grogu may be here, do you think there is a path for the show if we have Grogu disappear for a couple episodes to go train to be a Jedi?
Absolutely. I think the fans trust Jon Favreau enough to give them quality in the absence. And you don't want Grogu to be that crutch. Because if the show is going to be, if it goes down as one of the best shows ever, it can't just be because everyone loves Grogu. It's got to be because everything else was as good as Grogu as well. So I do see a path. I do hope they don't fall into it as him being the crutch for the show. And if you keep doing episodes like this, it's great. Now, I love Grogu, obviously, and I want him to be around. But based on what you asked me, I do think there's enough quality to the show that they can afford a couple absences of Grogu.
Yeah, the one thing I'm concerned about with this show is I know that they're doing a good job trying to tie in the canon of the other external Star Wars products, like especially Clone Wars and Rebels have gotten a lot of attention, especially this season. But my worry is that this show is still called The Mandalorian. There are times it feels like Mando himself is sort of like a side character in his own show, where it's like, oh, and he said this in the episode. This is them sort of winking at it. It's like, hey, like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what the backstory of this is, and I feel like in a way he's an outlet for the audience to casualize to some degree.
Right. I think it's wrong for us to assume that every character knows like everything. You know that's. And the Mando is like, I don't really know anything besides what I know.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, it's Star Wars. They're going to shoehorn in stuff, and you know, not everything's going to be as justified as the reason Boba Fett's back.
Yeah.
So it's going to be what it is, and we just got to kind of either like it or hate it and see where it goes. I trust the creators enough to say I think they know what they're doing, and they won't just sell out completely, especially because Disney announced a truckload of new shows coming. Mandalorian doesn't have to carry the weight for all of them.
Yeah, that's true. We'll get to that in a minute. And like my one point on that was just sort of like, I get that. It's like at the end of the day, the show is called The Mandalorian. Like, I know we have excitement about all these great ideas. You can weave them in casually, but like, I just don't want them to forget. Like, I trust that they'll do this. Is like, don't get too far down the rabbit hole where like the audience knows things the main character doesn't. I don't like that approach to the show.
I agree with you. It's got to be its thing. If it tries too hard to set up to something else, and we lose what Mandalorian's been completely, that'll be a tragic off the rails kind of direction.
It's kind of like, I want to say Iron Man 2 has this problem where like they're trying to set up so many elements of the MCU where they forget that it's actually supposed to be an Iron Man movie.
Yeah, I could see that. I think I think The Mandalorian is in better shape. I think that a lot of it's fan service, And that if you let the fan service control the direction of the series, that's when you lose us. And I think Star Wars fans are hip to that, and I don't think the creators will let that completely happen.
Yeah, I trust Filoni and Favreau to make the right choices here. And we have a finale coming up. We did not get the kind of super team building here. I think we'll get a little bit of that. There might yada yada picking up a couple of people along the way, sort of help out. But I do think we're gonna end up with our big fight at the end between Gideon and Mando. I think my guess is Grogu ends up back with him, and maybe we find out who was communicating with on Tython last episode. And that's sort of our cliffhanger for the next season.
Yeah, because Rosario Dawson's character mentioned another big bad that's coming in the future.
Yes, Thrawn.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and I'm sure that I wouldn't be surprised if Moff Gideon's the casualty at the end of season 2. I know in season 1, the big character who passed was Nick Nolte's character.
Yeah, Keel.
Yeah, and I think it'll be Gideon Moss this season, but with a new bad guy set up going forward.
That would be an interesting tease. I also feel like there are characters in the Star Wars universe that like could be fits to train Grogu. I would not be surprised if one of them popped their head up at the end of the season and say, "I got the message. I'm here to help."
For sure.
Yeah.
And I just hope that if Moff Gideon sees Mandalorian pull up in a wheelchair, ringing a bell, he gets out of there as soon as possible if he wants to live.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And you mentioned before, we'll wrap here. I'm going to talk more about this next week in the Mandalorian finale and coverage. I'm going to get some of the previous guests back together. We're going to dive into the whole thing. Disney Plus basically they have all the Marvel, they have all the Star Wars, they have so many things going on. Like, they had a big announcement the other day. Basically took all the toys that they had. They would just dump the toy box out and they're starting to play with them. They had so many different like shows and movies and stuff set up here. Star Wars, there's about 10 new show projects plus a couple of new movies. We have spin-offs on The Mandalorian. There's the Ahsoka Tano show. There are ones we've heard about, ones we hadn't heard about. Of all of these things that have come out, which one like you say, "Ooh, I want to check that out"?
There are two in the Star Wars realm that really make me want to see it, and it's Droid Story because I loved R2-D2 as a kid, so obviously I'm going to connect with that one, and Lando. I think those are the two big ones for Star Wars that I'm very interested in, and I had a friend joke to me that it's a good thing they're making the Obi-Wan and Vader show because and this I don't know, so you would vouch for this better than I, but they were supposed to be these great friends that turned, but there was no ever instances of them actually being friends. So this series will hopefully fill in the gap of their friendship, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get that sense as well because like they had to all they're supposed to be like brothers and all of that, and we got like maybe a smidgen of that in episode 2 and episode 3, but not enough to really expand on the relationship. And I like the idea of Star Wars going more in the show direction because there's so much rich tapestry here. But trying to jam everything in a 2.5-hour movie is not really a good idea for them right now.
And what do you think of them bringing back Hayden Christensen as Anakin?
Like, I think it's not a bad call because, I mean, it's been so long since he was in there and he got maligned when he got cast the first time. But I feel like absence makes the hearts grow fonder in the Star Wars fans. I feel like a lot of people were excited that he's coming back.
Oh, interesting. And, because we're talking about the Disney toy box, I'm very much looking forward to Winter Soldier and the Falcon and Loki as well.
Yeah. I'm intrigued about the Nick Fury show, The Secret Invasion. That's one has got my interest. Yeah,
and who is Ben Schwartz's character in the MCU?
He plays one of the Skrulls. He first appeared in Captain Marvel, I believe. I'll get throw the spoiler warning up again for the people who have not seen Captain Marvel. I think actually he's not even Captain Marvel. I got the wrong movie. He appears in I think Spider-Man. Or actually, no, he appears in Captain Marvel first. Then he shows up in Spider-Man: Far From Home because the whole movie we see that Nick Fury and Maria Hill are helping Peter Parker try and deal with some sort of extraterrestrial threat. And we find out it's not an extraterrestrial threat. But at the end of the movie, it's revealed that Mendelsohn's character is basically playing as Nick Fury. Nick Fury's been out in space working on a separate project.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, so like that's something that I think that aspect alone and getting a little bit of backstory what Nick Fury has been and when he left Earth, that's gonna be cool.
Yeah, no, I tell you, Disney has set the bar very high, and I'm sure not all these shows will be the best, but if they can hit 60%, if they can hit 6 out of these 10, so the 6 out of every 10 are good, the fans will be happy.
I feel like that was about the hit rate of the Netflix MCU shows too, because like I remember Iron Fist was terrible, The Defenders was disappointing, but the other 3 are pretty good.
Right, I heard good things about Luke Cage and Jessica Jones.
Yeah,
and Daredevil.
Yeah, and Daredevil. Punisher wasn't bad either, but Iron Fist and unmitigated disaster, and they sort of had no ideas for Defenders, which is disappointing.
It is disappointing, and doesn't it kind of take away from the canon if a show gets canceled after one season or they give up on it? Doesn't it feel uneven in a way?
It kind of does, but you also got the sense that like Disney was like, we're not going to let Netflix profit on our characters anymore. We'll just cancel all these. Netflix is like, we're just going to cancel all these shows. And Netflix, I think Disney's starting to bring some of these people back eventually.
Interesting. Hey, Disney's on top of the world right now, and I honestly feel like even before this announcement, Disney Plus was going to be Netflix's biggest competition, and now I think Netflix is Disney's biggest competition with the announcement of all this. So the roles have reversed, where I think right now Disney Plus is probably the number one streaming service worldwide. It will be, especially after these shows get released.
Yeah, and like, I mean, we've heard, like, speaking of like the Netflix stuff, of like, this is something I'll probably talk a little bit more with John Stanek, who is such not a fan of this idea because he loves Into the Spider-Verse. It sounds like Disney and Sony are trying to do the live action version, and one of the big announcements that's kind of late, it sounds like that Charlie Cox's Daredevil will be making his MCU big screen debut in that movie.
Interesting.
Which I
love. A lot going on.
Yeah, a lot going on, because they're going to incorporate the other 2 Spider-Man franchises in this movie, which he's not a big fan of. And I think for me, if you get Wilson Fisk as Kingpin back into the big screen movies of the villain, I think that's a great choice.
Oh, it's a lot to play with. And I saw someone tweet the other day, do I need to see Spider-Man 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1 to find out what's going on in the next one? And it made me laugh because it feels like Spider-Man has just been rebooted 3 times in the last 20 years.
It really has. It's incredible.
And that's because they keep changing ownership company-wise, right? Was that the Spider-Man story?
Well, the Spider-Man story is basically like Marvel sold the rights to Spider-Man's films to Sony. So I basically had to reboot it every so often to keep the rights. So that's why after the third Spider-Man in the Tobey Maguire series flopped, they sort of rebooted it. And then after the Garfield ones went quickly kaput, they basically made the deal with Marvel and their studio saying, hey, like, you help us write the film, we'll co-finance it, and then we'll have this unique arrangement where we basically share him.
So who's your favorite Spider-Man out of the 3?
It's clearly Holland to me.
Yeah, I agree. He embodies the character best, and he's most age appropriate.
Yeah, because like there were like by the end of the original Spider-Man trilogy, like Tobey Maguire playing like a 20-year-old when he's like 36 is not really appealing to me.
And the Venom is not canon, right? The Tom Hardy movie.
Venom is not MCU canon. I think technically, like Sony's gonna try and incorporate it somehow, like down the line, but like I don't know what the actual status of that is. It's sort of its own like adjacent universe, or like in the multiverse.
Gotcha. A lot, and that's what we had spoken off air about, the ability to keep up with Star Wars versus Marvel, and I think it's much more doable Star Wars.
Yeah, because there's fewer movies.
Yeah,
it's like you only have to deal with like 9 main movies. Rogue One and Solo are nice; they're optional. The show, The Mandalorian, is the main show right now. If you want to go back and watch Clone Wars and Rebels, you can, but you don't have to. Like these, you like after a certain point with the movies, you're like, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's a lot of big challenge. But Alan, thanks all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, keep also on social media. Keep on some of your other projects.
Sure, it's Twitter at Allen ALLEN _Austin_, and on Instagram Allen Austin Sports.
Yeah, you have any other projects going on you want to promote?
Yes, recently started a new podcast with a friend of mine called American Scene, SCENE, where we discuss movies that use the word American in the title, and we kind of break down their viewpoint on America through culture and statements, and we kind of just see if they earn their American title or what's American about them. And we've done American Pie so far, American Psycho, and a couple other films. So check that out on Instagram, American Scene Pod, and Twitter, American Scene. And it's available on Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, all that.
Yeah. When are you getting to American Hustle?
American Hustle is coming up soon, so stay tuned.
Yeah, that one I want to check out. I like that movie.
It's literally going to be our next episode that drops. So stay tuned.
Send me a link to that. I will definitely listen to that one.
Awesome, will do.
All right, thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Mike.